One technique in knitting displays romance, femininity, beauty, elegance, and that would be lace. The arrangement of stitches on tiny needles with very thin yarn. Lace is a rhythmic dance with a repeating pattern over multiple rows. By doing so, the design slowly comes together. Hello, fellow nerds. This is Sean. I am a nerd that knits, and lace happens to be one of my favorite techniques in knitting. So today we're going to talk about Estonian lace and how it is used in modern day knitting patterns. The modern lace pattern we will be talking about is the love letter top. Estonian lace has a rich background in regional tradition. Estonian lace originally started as a cottage industry for the local townspeople. Where have we heard this before? Oh yes, Finland. Knitters would knit shawls and sell them as gifts to tourists. White was the preferred color, and over time unique lace patterns from that region were created, thus Estonian lace. Tourism followed throughout Haapsalu, mainly because the town was known for its medicinal mud baths. Medicinal sanatoriums were opened in 1825 and another in 1845. Because of this, the town gained royal prestige when the Tsar Nicholas I and Alexander II preferred this region over others. Over time, Haapsalu became a popular tourist destination for the fashionable wealthy tourists visited from Russia, Germany, Sweden, and other European countries. At the end of the 19th century, lace shawls or stoles were a part of the current fashion. The increased popularity of these knitted items led to more innovation with their designs. It is postulated that Estonian lace was started by a family of Swedish settlers that brought it to their shores, but this is conjecture of knitting history and local lore. These knitting techniques over time were not written down. They were preserved by knitting swatches that were combined in a long line of rectangles. I kind of see it as like a long rectangular shawl of samples. Knitters would study these swatches and then repeat them without charts or other aids. Knitters that would borrow each other's swatches. They would exchange one swatch from their own collection as a form of borrowing payment. This helped spread designs and techniques to other knitters. By the late 19th and in the early 20th century, the Haapsalu shawl was a square in shape measured 1 meter by 1 meter or 40 inches by 40 inches. The classic design comprised of 3 components. The main section called the central section, the frame that worked as the interior border, and then the outside border. The center and the frame components were knitted together, but the border was added later. The border lace was knitted separately and then sewn on by hand to the piece. This was done in a way because the knitter used more traditional style needles during this time. Circular knitting needles were not invented. Delicate and high quality shawls could be pulled through a wedding ring. This type of test was used as a marketing ploy to increase the sales of its shawls. Basically, it's saying that it's so finely knit and it's so beautiful, but it's so thin it could go through your wedding band. So we're going to talk about the timeline history of Estonian knitting. So Estonian knitting, oldest knitting dates back to 13th century. Gloves, hats, and socks were traditionally made. And then we're going to talk about the location of Estonia. So the location of Estonia is located below Finland to the left of Russia. They gained independence in 1991 from the Soviet Union. So Estonian lace began in the city of Haapsalu. That's why we refer to it as a Haapsalu shawl. And it is estimated around the time of the early 19th century. If you guys are kind of like, what do you mean Finland? I did a Finland video earlier talking about the history of Finnish knitting. It is really interesting how Finland's like here and then here's Estonia. I mean, obviously there's some water separating the two. It's very interesting how they both kind of have similar origin stories when it comes to cottage industry, and then it moves into such a huge part of its culture. I mean, Finnish socks, which is the video I did previously, really has such a stronghold on that culture, and it's very fascinating from a historical knitter's point of view, or just anyone who's interested in history, period. Back to Estonia. So, fun fact, for an Estonian wedding, it was common to have knitted mittens as gift for the wedding guests. This I think is a great idea. I did a lot of knitting for my wedding, but I never was like, oh, I'm gonna make all these mittens for my wedding guests. That would take so much time to do, and that is such a labor of love. So I think that would be so fun. So let's talk about Estonian lace today. Knitting in Haapsalu continues and is still a thriving industry. This I feel is very important because the pictures that I have seen of Estonia, you still see all these knitting traditions. You still see people put up marketplace areas and they have all their knitting gloves, they have sweaters, they have all this traditional, like some of these old traditional designs, because Estonian knitting obviously just doesn't start and stop with lace. This is kind of like an off branch of Estonian knitting, and you can really nerd out and get into Estonian knitting, and the designs are gorgeous, the colors are amazing. It is just, we are just scratching the surface on Estonian knitting in this video because I'm really focusing on lace. There really is so much to Estonian knitting that I am just having to leave out because there's so much to talk about. It really is a vital part of its culture. And it's very interesting how when you put these two countries that are relatively close to each other have such a very strong cultural ties to their culture and to design work, and it's just really interesting. An Estonian lace is still very prevalent in our knitting world. I mean, obviously these techniques are still heavily around. Design inspiration. A lot of design inspiration comes from nature, subjects like the butterfly, blueberries, the wild cherry branch, and the very popular lily of the valley. The lily of the valley pattern incorporated NUPPS in its design. This helped give the design texture. So let's pause and talk about NUPPS. What are NUPPS? NUPPS are a design indicative of Estonian lace. In fact, because of these NUPP shawls were sold by the weight. NUPPS require more yarn to make, so to this day it's a technique that you can only be manufactured via hand knitting. NUPP rhymes with soup. I personally was pronouncing it NOP. Is a NUPP. It's a technique that requires increasing the stitches with yarn overs and then decreasing them down to one stitch, creating a little ball or a button, and then securing them with another stitch that is picked up under the stitch to secure it. There are so many videos online to show you this technique. It sounds confusing, but it isn't. Even though knitters did take inspiration from nature, they also turned to celebrities. And one of the main celebrities during this time was Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo received a shawl from Estonian lace knitters. They designed a very unique pattern, and it was created from the shawl that was sent to her in 1935, incorporating a heart design, and it was sent to the star in 1935, with the hope that the actress would wear it in one of her films and thus highlight the art of Estonian lace. Modern day lace patterns are, in my eyes, the love ballad to the knitters of the past. We are still using their techniques and designs. In the modern day knitting pattern that we are going to be looking into, it's called the love letter top, but you can definitely notice that the Greta Garbo heart design is prominently shown at the bottom of the hem. This is a very popular pattern on Ravelry. I do want to preface that. And then let's talk about the NUPPS throughout the entire piece. In this design, they are within the heart as well around the bust line of the piece. In the love letter top I added more NUPPS for additional texture and as a way to add more length to the top. Hello fellow nerds, this is a sweater check. You're actually going to see how much longer we need to make this garment. Partly because I know that this is just not going to do it for me. So I'm going to put this on. I'm going to see how much extra I need to add. And this will be our sweater check. Like before, I steamed this garment just with the steamer. I did not block it all the way. This is why we do sweater checks, especially for this one in particular, because we are just right here at the very, not the very bottom of the bust line, but we're getting there. This is where the designer said, if you want to make it longer, right here in this designing motif that she created. I'm gonna rotate for you so you can see it. We need more. Also, why you should be checking your sweaters while you're making them. Everyone has different bust sizes. Everyone has different sizes altogether. This is why we are doing our sweater check, and we definitely need to add some extra length on this one. Thank you. And just to remind you, these sweater checks are very important. You should be doing sweater checks when you're making any garment. This one definitely is a good thing that we did this sweater check. Some patterns do not have direct lineage. Sometimes it's really hard to research where these patterns come from because everything kind of blends together. Some people would say, oh, it's from that region. Oh, it's from that region. Oh, it's from that region. Well, people travel. It's not like even back then they didn't travel. Sometimes you really cannot link a specific design pattern to a specific region. So that does make research hard, especially when we're talking about knitting lace history. But let's go back to the love letter top. Guys, this is my second sweater check. This one has been a little fickle one. She's just not long enough for me. So I have had to really add in some extra details that I will definitely be going over. So once again, this is my second sweater check. Now I thought it was important to keep the same thing that I wore the first sweater check the second time, so we have some consistency. Once again, second sweater check, wearing the same thing I did before. She's definitely getting longer. Now what is important to note is I did not steam block it this time. So this is just from the first steaming. We're about here. I'd like it a little bit lower. When I had it on my shirt, like my belly button is here. I will be adding a couple more details to this. I will definitely go over that a little later. So once again, second sweater check. This one, you definitely need to be taking on and off and checking consistently. Even if you're measuring, I really feel that this checking it makes a huge difference. This particular top, you see a lot of Estonian lace and you see a lot of lace from other regions. That's what's really nice. When I looked at this pattern, I was very thankful that the designer had a lot of different sizes. She included a lot of pages of notes. I think the pattern's like 20 pages long. It's a very long pattern indeed. The only gripe that I would have is that it's way too short. I did 2 sweater checks this time. I just kept on coming up way too short, and I think what my problem is that I be a busty lady. You need more length, especially when, you know, boobs get in the way. I think what was so nice about this pattern is you see like little samples of a knit design, and then it transitioned to another little sample of a knit design and another, and it's like little kind of like bits of lace sectioning throughout the pattern, and I really like that. And I think that when the designer suggests that you just do this one section over and over and over to create the length, I think that that ruins the design of this particular shirt. I really tried to go back and pick up previous lace repeats that would work for adding additional length at the bottom, and I still feel like the top is too short. You know, it is gonna be what it's gonna be. I think it's beautifully designed. I think that she gave you so much information. She also has videos on how to do things on her YouTube. She also has links to how to do certain techniques. She goes over NUPPS. She goes over a lot of really great techniques on her YouTube video. She even talks about all the detailing of this particular top on her YouTube video, which is great and wonderful, and that's why I didn't really want to include any of the techniques that I use, because you could just go to her video and check it out, and I encourage that you do go and look at her video. I will definitely link it in the bottom of the description. I'm a little dismayed that she didn't have a separate section that said, hey, if you want to add more length for certain sizes, here is different row of things that you could put in. I was really sad that here's this beautiful top thrown off aesthetically by having, you know, these little wet chunks, and you'll see it in this sweater. It's like this is a chunk of this pattern, and then it transitions to like a seed stitch and maybe a couple of bumpies, NUPPS I should say, and then it goes to another pattern and then another lace kind of like little sampler, because I think it's such a beautifully written sweater. So by the time you get to this one chunk, it's like, oh, and if it's too short, just repeat this as many times as you need for extra length, and that throws off the aesthetic of this top. Am I being a nitpicker? Yes, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to knit and pick. and to do all those things. I really love how this top goes into Estonian lace. It doesn't really talk about the Estonian lace, but you do see all the historical aspects of it. So I really do enjoy that about it. Another thing that I will talk about is the yarn that I used for my love letter top. I'm not sure that my 100% cotton was a good idea. I probably should have gotten a little bit more stretch. That is definitely on me. But I do love the really sweet kind of lavender color that I chose. In the pattern, it says that there will be a little bit of stretch or a little bit of that you want to do it like a negative. So, but I really think that's just determined on the yarn that you use. Because if you're doing cotton, I mean, 100% cotton doesn't really have much stretch to it. I mean, like you need just a little bit of nylon or just a little bit of elastic in there. I feel like you need to be a little choosy with your yarn. I should not have picked 100% cotton is maybe what I'm trying to say. Thank you for learning about Estonian lace. Thank you for listening. I hope this helps. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe.